Okay. So I think I'm live. So it's nice to, well, not see everyone, but thank you for having me today at Indie Game Business. And essentially today I'm going to be talking about how to pitch to publishers. So just some brief spoilers. I'm going to start by introducing myself, and then I've got two kind of main approaches. So firstly, it's from the high level. So just thinking about like what's expected from initial conversations with publishers and what each party is ultimately looking to achieve. And then I'm very practically minded. So we're going to go in the weeds a bit, and we're going to look at practical information. I'll give you a list of do's and don'ts, and then we can grease the wheels for a follow-up to make sure that everything is as smooth as possible for that. So to introduce myself, I'm Julia, starting with the name. And I started my career working at Jagex. There I was mainly working for the publishing arm called Jagex Partners, and I was looking for free-to-play, massively multiplayer online titles. After that, I decided to go to the other side of the table and work for an agency called Rocket Ride Games, which was really awesome. And there I was representing developers looking for publishers, looking for investors, and looking for work for hire. I think the client that I worked with the most closely was Invisible Walls. Like, we were talking on a daily basis and we did loads of great work together. So when I look back on the things that are emotionally important to me and where I've learned the most, Invisible Walls is definitely up there. So the logo goes in my little mood board of me and my journey in the games industry. And I joined SEGA fairly recently at the end of last year. And essentially I'm working in the Searchlight arm. So in a nutshell, Searchlight is responsible for finding, securing, and helping to incubate new external projects with a clear goal of future acquisition. So we're looking at a variety of opportunities and teams, and it's super exciting. And then if anyone has been reading my cheesy little quotes on the side in terms of like what I've heard over the years and over the time, I have 2 degrees in history as well. So while that was fun, I decided to find my fun elsewhere. And generally, I've seen loads of pitches. I'm really bad actually at estimating how many I've seen. It's probably over 1,000. And I'd like to consider myself a subject matter expert. I've definitely seen quite a bit. So first, with the high level, what is expected from these conversations and what is each party ultimately looking to achieve? I've decided to split this first from the publisher perspective and then from the developer perspective. And basically, I think that this is really important to consider because you can get the most out of the situation and out of the conversation if you know what everyone is expecting and you kind of plan for it. So, you know, stepping out and seeing the bigger pattern, the bigger journey. So firstly, what are publishers expecting from the conversation? And please excuse and hopefully laugh at my tiny subheading jokes. So as a publisher, me, and I think everyone else as well, the 3 key things that we're looking to evaluate is the talent of the studio, the game design, so it being strong is a good thing, and the commercial opportunity. So if we dive in for the talent, I think capacity to execute is really important. You're going to be pitching, you know, as a developer, you're going to be pitching a product that isn't finished yet, and we want to feel that it's fairly likely that you're going to finish on budget and on time. And then good coverage of core disciplines. So the way I see it is the kind of core disciplines are programming, design, and art and production. So so if you have those and you're telling the story of the leaders in that, then it gives a picture of if there's any weaknesses in the team and, you know, how the methodology comes together. And then previous experience in something similar and or a strong prototype. So again, showing that you're likely to deliver, you're mitigating that risk, super helpful. So next, the strong game design. So we'll start with the intangible, the fun factor, you know, whether it's the build or you're imagining it, there's something addictive about it, or something that makes you smile, or you want to share it with your friends or recommend it to people. Gameplay loop is coherent, might be quite basic, but I think if you think that developers have certainly spent a lot of time thinking about the game and working on the game, it can be quite hard to distill that in a coherent way in such a small time to a publisher. So the publisher wants to feel like they have an understanding, generally speaking, what the game is going to do, and tying into that the game has a clear vision. And then this last bit is a bit more personal. So genre features well covered. So let's say, for instance, you're pitching an RPG game. I've had situations in the past where someone's pitched me an RPG and they haven't mentioned anything about the progression. So I've asked. Generally, I think it would be better if you consider the common features of the genre and address them in some way, just so we know what's up. Maybe you don't have a deep progression system, but there's something innovative about it. But I think covering all the bases helps demonstrate that you're a subject matter expert, and fills in the blanks in that general way that we want to start being introduced. And then the commercial opportunity. So money makes the world go round, right? So is there space in the market? Are there people there that are going to be interested in your game? Does it hold strong against the competition? Does it have a unique quality or personality? Or is it just going to get lost in the sea of all the games? I mean, that's the constant struggle, isn't it? And is it a portfolio fit? So I don't know how many people have had rejections from publishers, but portfolio fit is kind of a key term that always comes up. And I think to get behind that a bit more, it's important to think of just the general strategy of a publisher, and why they exist as a publishing organization, and making sure that you understand what that long-term goal for the publisher is before you go into the conversation, so that you're talking to the right parties and more likely to get a yes and less likely to get the it's not a portfolio fit thing. So I tried to think of all the reasons why publishers exist. It's not exhaustive, but I had a good go. So on the left here, I'll just give a couple of examples now. This is not really a reading exercise. And just as a disclaimer as well, the whole presentation is a little bit text heavy because I would really like for it to be useful as a resource after. So I'll send it round, and please feel free to screenshot and however you want to capture the information. But back to the point. So maybe the publisher exists to do an eventual M&A with partner studios. Maybe it exists to find indie darlings. So they really, really want to work with those small gems. Perhaps they want to work with the best of the best, the most experienced, the biggest teams. And let's go to one of the even more strategic points, like, is it the company's main or additional revenue stream? So is it an offshoot of a bigger thing, or is the bread and butter and very cause for survival that? And then moving to the best to know before you talk, like the kind of high level boilerplate from the developer side of things to know about the publisher, I'd say is budget range and scope, the size of studios they typically work with, preferred genres, preferred business model, the preferred platform. And I think if you're not able to find that stuff publicly, I think it's something that you should prioritize in the very, very beginning part of the initial meeting, because you don't want to waste, let's say the first 15 minutes until you get to something like the business model, or, that you also want to do it on VR. And then it turns out it's a deal breaker, and it's kind of a shame because time's been wasted, and it's all a bit awkward. So I think trying to get to those deal breakers is important. And yeah, I mean, to summarize, understanding a publisher's strategic motivations will help you talk to the right parties and get you closer to a yes. So an example of this desk research that you could have done in order to be prepared to talk to a publisher would be SEGA. And now I'm going to immediately jump out of the role play. Obviously, it's not just an example. I work for SEGA Searchlight, and I think this is a good time for me to tell you what we are looking for. But especially the stuff on the left, is stuff that you can all find publicly through press releases, through our website, and just generally with publishers. That's the things you'd want to look at. You'd want those sound bites from people saying, we're looking for this, these are our, this is our vision. Oh no, we're not looking to do that, and whatever. So for Sega, we're looking for long-term relationships. The ultimate end goal that we have is to acquire studios. Sega is super interested in franchise building. I was really happy to see that the talk before this one was with Christian. I mean, he's awesome anyway, but he was talking all about franchises, and I was like, it's exactly up Sega's alleyway. Sega isn't interested in volume, so generally Searchlight will only sign a handful of games a year. There's not loads and loads of press releases all the time. We don't have a scattergun approach, but when we do choose that quality relationship, we give a lot of time to it. And then as a whole, doing a catalog stalk. Sega has its strengths in strategy management, RTS, RPG games, and as a business model, premium plus DLC. And then we go to the key details, boilerplate stuff. So budget range and scope, let's say on average about $1 million plus, AAA, AA, and larger. We don't care if the studio is 2 people or 50 people. We're agnostic about the genre as well. The thing that's the most important for us is if there's franchise potential, and then the other stuff can kind of be factored in. And then preferred business model is games as a service, so premium content with DLC. A mixture of paid and free stuff to keep the community engaged and happy. We're very, very community driven. And then our preferred platforms are PC console first. Okay, so that's end of example and information sharing about Sega. Then from the developer side, what should you expect from the conversation? So definitely to present. I know that might be obvious, but again, I've had a few conversations where we kind of start, we get into it, and then I say something like, so do you have a pitch deck? Like, are you going to share your screen? And, just off the back of that, I think it is good to think, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to show something, and this is what's expected to happen. And then, again, another obvious ones, to be asked a bunch of questions about the game, your background, and the future. So it's really good to think around these points before you start to enter these conversations, so you're not taken aback. To be given some initial feedback on the game concept and the value proposition. So I think from this point onwards, I'm graduating more from, what usually happens to, I think, what a developer should be entitled to hear and to know at this stage anyway. So with the feedback, we don't want it to feel like an interview, but because it's kind of a quick fire thing, it can be easy to not be clear enough with the feedback that we're giving. So I think it's totally, as publishers, so I think it's totally fine to just ask, very to the point questions where you say, did you like it? What concerns do you have at this stage? Just to flesh that out. I mean, it doesn't really kill the vibe, from my experience. And then, to leave with a clear understanding of the process and next steps, to leave with a clear understanding of what type of game and partnership the publisher is looking for. So those 2 points tie into the setting expectations, to gauge maybe how interested they are, how likely they are to follow up, trying to glean that how did it go and how will it go sort of thing, to chew over instead of feeling worried about what's going to happen next month or in 6 months. And then to understand what publishing services are offered, so how the publisher works with partners, and to find out about previous relationships. So I'd say if the initial conversation that you have with a publisher is one of those quick fire conference ones, then perhaps going into loads of detail about previous relationships isn't a realistic ambition to have at the end of the call. But still, again, I'm coming back to that point where it should feel like a two-sided thing, and you should definitely feel like you can ask questions and you can kind of you can orchestrate it in a way that you will get feedback without being dominating, without being arrogant. I think it's possible. And so the takeaway conversation will be very focused on your competencies, but don't forget to ask your own questions. And then, as I said, you're going to be asked a bunch of questions about the future, your background, the game. So thinking about the short term, what you need for your project, what's coming up straight up. So what kind of relationship do you want? What kind of services do you want? Is it a case where, let's say you have a concept or an early prototype and you want help from a publisher? So for example, SEGA funds concepts from paper pitches. Some publishers, most publishers don't. So just thinking about that is not only going to help you match up, but again, highlighting those things in early discussions can identify deal breakers, get you to a no faster, and get you, back on track to find the right relationship for you. So yeah, is it like more an investment in the vision, an early thing, or perhaps it's a case where you don't have much runway left, but you just need to polish. There's some final things that you need to do that helps kind of set out the scope and the relationship going forward. When I say how important is community-driven development to you, I guess what I'm alluding to is more philosophy in general. So are you planning for early access? Are you particularly married to a business model? Like, are you really free to play? Are you really not free to play? Again, I think like publishers and developers across the spectrum have a lot of different opinions about that. So getting that out is something good to talk about too. And then other than the pure cash resource, do you need to ramp up the team to achieve your goals? And then moving to the long term, so is the game a standalone? Are you going to have sequels? Are you going to, service it for the next 10 years? What's the future plan there? Or will you release it and immediately move on to your next project? So again, it's highlighting deal breakers or potential synergies. Synergies is a can't believe a word I've ended up like actually using seriously, but here we go. So for example, yeah, SEGA is looking for franchises, so lots of titles around one IP. And then another thing, I think, when you're talking to larger publishers, that is kind of interesting and again a bit awkward, is we'll be talking about the scope, we'll be talking about the budget, and developers will come in with a very, very bootstrapped mindset, like, what do I need to do to, like, the bare minimum I need to execute my vision and keep the lights on, and maybe have a studio in a year if I'm lucky. And it sounds super, super stressful. But I think with the larger publishers, and for example SEGA as well, you need to adopt a different kind of thinking where you want to like lift the ceiling a little bit, so you're not under so many constraints, and see what room that leaves. So features or team size or things like that. In some conversations it is appropriate to dream bigger and kind of understand what potential that opportunity has. And then just the vision for the studio in the future. Like, what do you want your studio to be known for? Do you want it to be known for a particular genre? Like strategy masters, art style, personality, to demonstrate to the publisher that you know where you're going, or you have ambition for where you're going, helps them like map how they could possibly help you get there. And now the weeds. And yeah, those are some screen snipping shortcuts. I remember when I had a Mac, I was just horrendous, but thought it could be cool. So the practical information. Obviously, it's a lot of stuff, but I think these are the, if I had to box it down, every literal thing I think is good to know. It would be this. So let's dig into it. So in terms of the team, the company vision and values is good. So it's a weird way to introduce your baby and your history and everything. Your baby being the game, not literally your baby, but in lockdown times, maybe even so. But yeah, with company vision and values, it's a quick way to get to know, I guess. And then the team size, so the current and peak if you're hoping to expand. I think another thing, like location. So everyone is remote in some way now, but location headquarters is always good to know. Then the previous titles shipped. So if we're thinking again about like how publishers are evaluating, that helps mitigate risk and understand you better in the shortest amount of time possible. And then bios of your core team. So thinking about those core expertises, who's doing it, why are they great, what's the overview of the team. And then moving to design. Visuals are so important. They're just my favorite and the best. So whether it's concept art, whether it's screenshots, publishers are looking in third-party publishing rather, publishers are looking for original IP. I mean, we all know this, but the IP, the visual part of the IP is so critical in communicating like what's in your head out there, and it makes the whole presentation more digestible. So definitely big fan of visuals. Then next, gameplay loop. So again, when I was talking about the coherency of that, just the flow, like what is the player going to do moment to moment? This is really good, obviously, as a slide to speak to and explain to the person you're presenting it to. But remembering as well that this pitch deck is going to be a point of reference for later for whoever's looking at it. So that's really good to have, essential even. And then the setting genre. I mean, genre, very boilerplate, but it would be not great if you forgot it. Be a bit confusing. And then the business model monetization design. So I think where I'm going here is more in the sense, especially the more gameplay mechanic affecting or adjacent it is, the more you would want to have it in to show how it ties in. Maybe it's just premium and it's fine, but maybe there are some elements that are more linked to progression or metagame. So how it relates to the design is important. Then on to production. So your roadmap and the time to release. So showing that you're organized, showing that you have it scoped, and depending on the publisher and their release schedules, this is super good to know. But just generally having a plan is great, and communicating that in a clear way. Then what platforms you hope to release on. So sometimes this doesn't always come up, even though you think that it would. It might be a case of like PC, but we're open to console. Or it might be, no, definitely we're going next gen, we're going all out. So just having that there, being clear. Then post-launch plan, if relevant, especially for games as a service publishers. I think showing that you have clout in at least scoping out what you will need as a games as a service studio and what kind of content you're making, and showing that you can create like a content schedule, even if it's not really expert and detailed, is good. So for instance, SEGA with their publishing agreements gives 12 months post-launch funding. So showing that post-launch plan is getting you even closer to all the good cooperation and the funds. And then the man-month rate and the runway remaining, the general business production overview, like how much does it cost to run? Okay, good to know. And then tech, I would say with the tech, don't get too granular, because it's generally quite unlikely that the person that you're talking to in the first instance is going to be a super duper tech expert. But I think there are some common phrases and words that we've all picked up at this point that does help understand and scope the opportunity. So the engine used, whether it's custom, it's Unreal, Unity, so on and so forth. If you have a multiplayer, what backend you're using. Other features such as crossplay integrations, if they're important, speak to them. And then you want to be singing your own praises as much as possible. So anything proprietary. Have you developed your own database? Was Unreal not enough in some way, so you did a custom piece? Yeah, please let us know. It's always awesome. And then we go to the commercials. So the development budget. That is a really good thing. That speaks to the scope, again, of the project. There's so many ways to identify the scope. And then the budget to release, competitors and market positioning. So really understanding where you sit in the market and where the opportunity is. And then if you are benefiting from or stand to benefit from something like tax credits, government grants, that is very, very interesting because it's mutually beneficial to the publisher and the developer. So definitely call that out. It's going to put loads of ticks in your boxes. Again, like just greasing the wheels for the value proposition. And then the ask, like be explicit with what you want. And how, it's good to have thought about that beforehand. So the services required, I mean, these days it's pretty modular and publishers are offering, most of the things across the board. Some of them might be even stronger in distribution, depending on the main function of the business and the sub functions. But if you don't need something like QA because you've got it in-house, then it would be good to call that out. And then, okay, we've spoken about the development funding and the development budget rather, but then very specifically saying how much the publisher needs to cover, also very important. And then if you have ambitions for other platforms, are you hoping to port internally? Do you have experience of doing that before? Are you hoping to use it as a learning experience, or will you be leaning on the publisher to set up the right, outsourcing opportunity or porting opportunity? I don't feel like any of that console stuff is ever a deal breaker, but it's always a good logistical thing just to know and just to think like what's factored into the budget so far, what isn't. And then if you're open to equity investment or M&A, I think it's really good when you're talking about either what you're asking for or about the team that you're open, because then it really organically sets up a potential follow-up conversation for that. And now my list of do's and don'ts. I've tried to put way more do's than don'ts because I feel like on the whole, everyone is so passionate about their projects and a delight to speak to, and my job is awesome. So I want to frame it in the way where like everyone is doing really well. They could just do better because everyone can do better, rather than like, here are my complaints about like the worst pitches, which is also interesting and maybe more comedic, but I was trying to go for super practical here. So do screen share and come with a deck. Clearly that one time when, or maybe 3 times where someone didn't, and I was like, are you going to share? Left a lasting impact with me, but it's obvious, so please do it, especially in COVID times. That's, that the screen sharing is going to happen. Do your research, as demonstrated in the examples. Do demonstrate yourself as a subject matter expert. I think, speaking to this point, it's really cool when, as a publisher, you leave the conversation and you get the strong sense of, that person is a really safe pair of hands, or that person is really smart or really good at what they do. And I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, well, how can you tell in such a short period of time whether someone is, intelligent or gifted or whatever, especially if it might not be your discipline. But I think there's a way that people like to talk about it. So maybe it's in the market slide, maybe talking about all the titles that are similar and drawing them out, and then talking about the features. And then you think, wow, this person really knows their niche, or really knows, the key features in this genre. Or perhaps it's someone talking about the production methodology, not in a way that's inaccessible, because otherwise it would just be completely over my head. But I think there is a way to show your passion and talk about your discipline or whatever. So if there's a way, that definitely goes a long way. Do take rejections on the chin. I mean, everyone is strategically looking for so many different things, and I feel like saying no is hard. Hearing no is harder, definitely. But it's really not to do with the fact that like you suck or your game sucks. Like sometimes it's just we're not going for the same things. So I think being graceful in that and being professional is good, because you never want to burn bridges wherever you are, especially in an industry that is small. Moving on, go into the meeting with questions of your own prepared. Yeah, it's not an interview. You deserve to find out what you want to find out as well. And we can all do this in a way where no one comes off cross as arsey. Do seek feedback continuously to improve your pitch. sometimes you've been looking at something for so long, you can't even see what's good and what's bad anymore. So if people do have pointers, you know, use those people to help you evolve. And then if you share a video, make sure it's no longer than 2 minutes, I'd say, especially over Zoom or whatever meetings platform you're using. I guess the first point to that is if you're streaming it over the meeting, good luck, because it's not Twitch, and generally it doesn't grow that well in terms of the frame rate. And if you have a fairly short meeting, it's hard to demand someone to be on a digital call and just being quiet and watching a video for 10 minutes. It's just like quite a lot. So just keep it short and snappy. Do leave time for questions at the end. I mean, the ultimate goal isn't to go through your presentation, kind of see that there's a couple of minutes left and think, yes, I've got a couple of slides left as well. This is going to be great. And then feel happy that you did get through it. And then a couple of days later, as it starts to percolate, starts to trickle down, you're thinking, oh God, I don't actually know what they thought. And I didn't find out that much about them. And, in the heat of the moment, especially when you're jumping from meeting to meeting, it's a very reasonable thing to do. But that discussion and the questions are way more important than finishing the deck. If you keep checking the time and start to see that you're running out of time, just skip some slides, maybe make a note for later where you're getting bogged down, and it's that part that's the most important. All the rest is just, you need to be able to facilitate the feedback and discussion about potential partnership, and there's a really big burden of information that you have to convey in a very short space of time, but you're just like plugging the context to have this conversation. So always use that dynamic conversation as really the goal, rather than to present or to read. And now very specific and practical. Ensure your file sharing method isn't too strenuous on security policies. Yeah, very specific, but quite a bugbear generally. Because if you have something that it isn't very common and you're sharing your pitch deck, video, build, blah, 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 and then you have to download a client or you have to set up a user account or things like that, there are just some IT policies where it becomes not possible, and then you have to go all the way back around the houses, back and forth, just trying to get the documents, and it slows things down. So just try and use something common, or just think about that. And then I think, yeah, this one is really important and really nice to hear again, in terms of things that scouts say to each other after they leave conversations, and they're like, oh, that was really great. I think talking about your learnings from previous projects, even if they were failures, is awesome to hear, because it shows that you're honest. So you're not just saying like, we did everything great, and like, yeah, this is going to be the best because we've always been the best. Hi. But also just showing where things have been hard, and that you have a growth mindset, and that, this is an industry that is trend driven, it changes fast. I mean, yeah, it's wild. So I think to show your learnings and your resilience there really shows the value that you add as well, and all the things previously that you're going to bring to this project. Okay, let's go to the don'ts now. So don't badmouth competitors. Like I said, the industry is small. You might not even ever find out if the person that you badmouthed was a friend of the person that you were talking to. So just generally, I would avoid it. I think it's nice to have nice things to say about people. And now I'm thinking, like, if you don't have anything tonight, it's nice to say, don't say it at all. But just in terms of professionalism and the consequences, it's better to stick to that. Don't compare your project to titles widely out of your scope range. So let's say there's 3 of you and you're making a shooter game, indie shooter game. You don't want to say that your main comparisons are Halo and Counter-Strike, because the scope is just, you're always going to be in the shadow of those AAA titles. There's no way you can compete with that. There's no way you have the resources for that. So what is relative to you and what is reasonable and achievable? Don't get bogged down creating a detailed sales forecast for your game, as you may sandbag yourself. Essentially, publishers are going to have to, at one point in the evaluation process, make a forecast, make a P&L, make a break even. They are going to do that. So I would just leave it to them when the time comes. I mean, naturally they won't share it, but they won't share it with you because it's all like proprietary and stuff. But like that question will get answered, and that methodology will get hashed out. And I think publishers have more resources, so it can be quite hard to do it by yourself. And I just think you risk shooting yourself in the foot. It's not saying that like no one is capable of doing it or anything like that, but when you have the amount of investment that you need so close in the presentation to the amount of revenue you think you might make, you might just have the publisher look at it and say, that's not very good return on investment. Best to leave it open and have it, you know, a more tried and tested resource-based way of evaluating a bit later down the line than making things difficult for yourself. Okay, don't be dishonest. I think that's a pretty good life rule, business rule, just generally. Don't overpromise. So everything has to be realistic. If you're promising the kitchen sink in a very, very, very quick time frame and everything, it is going to come across perhaps as naive. Worst case, best case, optimistic. So I think, yeah, that realism is important. Don't come unprepared. So make sure that all your links work, that you have all the files that you need for presenting. Make sure that you know who from your side is showing up. I mean, now work and life and everything is so overlapping. So it's not saying don't make mistakes or don't do something that could be socially awkward or that you could be judged for or whatever. But I think the things that you can control, please do, because it's professional. It conveys respect. We really want to get as much as we can from these small meetings. So just looking like you're not prepared just looks like you don't care, and just feels like a bit of a waste of time. So I think coming across as organized is important. And then just a left field thing, don't spend too long talking about the law. Some people get so into the world that they've built, and it's really, really nice to see the passion. But we have a limited amount of time. So if you spend ages saying, and then in the third age, after the 7th generation of elf, then this happened, and then there was a cataclysmic earthquake, it gets a bit much, considering that we have to go over the concise things. So just make sure that everything is balanced in how you're communicating it. All right, and then greasing the wheels for a follow-up. So you want to have a package of pitch deck, build if relevant, and video after the call. I really, really, really like videos. I use them all the time, and most people do internally. If we're talking about like Project Z, oh, what's Project Z again? Let me just send you the video. Presenting it in meetings, anything. It's fast, it's snappy, it's the proof of concept kind of immediately. It gives you the whole package. And then the pitch deck is kind of more for delving into, for reference, where you can really hone in on whatever question you have, whatever thing you have. Hence my big like bingo table thing. So if you can do a video, that's great. And just generally speaking, I think no matter how amazing your pitch is, it's quite likely that the scout is going to forget it, because there's just so many pitches and so many things going on, or forget one detail. Sometimes you completely forget, and you'll look at a detail and then it will all come flooding back, but maybe there's a few gaps. So just make sure that the things that you have for reference are very, very meticulous, because sometimes it can cost you, with all the stuff going on behind the scenes, it can cost a developer weeks in the evaluation process just to not have written down the team size or to not have written down the budget. So I really think just having those boilerplate stuff is super, super important. You want to help the content acquisition specialists, aka scouts, aka me and people like me, to help you to pitch it. And they're going to be the people who decide whether is ever going to see the light of day internally. They're going to be the people representing your game, being the champion in their opinion. So you kind of have to train them up to be able to regurgitate what your game is about and why it's special in the best way possible. So it's a very fun and interesting experience. But yeah, generally Dark Scout is going to present it to other people. So make sure they have everything they need. Make sure they walk away understanding everything, and that you're happy with, their take on what your game is, I think. And then exec summary style slides, or communicating in an executive summary style, bullet points, keywords, bold stuff, platforms, release date, things like that, in email format afterwards will make it easier for people to remember your pitch. So yeah, just thinking about reducing the cognitive load to be able to recall what your game's about and why it's special. And then the takeaway point for that, to paint a picture a bit more, is that you can see it in a way where your pitch is the shop window. So help the scout get people in their organization excited by delivering high quality pitch material. And lastly, I think, to speak to the high quality pitch material thing, it's good to have something that you're proud of, good to have a point of reference. And then I think if it feels like your pitch deck doesn't have loads of effort, let's say it's white background, it's Calibri size 11 black, and that's it. I mean, that's a bit of an extreme. Then people can be reductive, and they might think like, well, if you can't even make a nice pitch deck, how are you going to make a nice, menu for a game, a nice UI, a nice UX, whatever. So having that package nice is only gonna work in your favor. Anyway, that is the end of my spiel about everything that I've learned, and I really, really hope that this has been helpful. And so if anyone has questions now, I can answer it, and I will definitely jump on the Discord after.
Hi, Julia.
Hey.
Hi. All right, we got a bunch of questions, and I've got some questions too. So if we just hammer these questions out, but we'll see. We'll see. That was interesting, and it gave me a bunch of questions in my head too.
Good.
All right, so here we go. Mike Davis Jr. on YouTube asks, do you think a strong enough prototype would give publishers enough confidence in signing a developer without any previously published games?
I think in theory, and I'd like to think in practice, yes, because there's such a strong FOMO with publishers, fear of missing out, that you hear about things like Minecraft, Stardew Valley, and people are always super worried that they're going to miss out on that opportunity. So the idea of having like a kind of fledgling team with an amazing idea that's going to disrupt the genre, I think is very dreamy for publishers. So yes, when we're going through those sort of initial questions, it sounds like, when we're asking about experience, it sounds like you're screwed otherwise. But I don't think that's the case. I think that, in the matrix of all the things that are risky and nice, it is a bit more of an uphill thing. But because you have that pull, that sweet allure, that maybe this could be a hit, and you're the one who found it, I think that does work in your favor. So I think a strong enough prototype can definitely go places.
All right, well, here is a good question. This is my question. So, and you don't have to name the game, but has there ever been any games that you passed up on that in the future you're like, dang it, I wish we would have got that game?
Well, I think it's hard so hard, but it's hard from my point of view because I'm the top of the funnel. So there's loads of things that I see and I like that become no's later. It can be like yes for 4 parts of the process and then no, or something really, really hard is when you get really invested in the game and you're like, yeah, we're going to sign it, it's going to be great, blah, blah, blah. And then another publisher just gets there faster, or another publisher was just more interesting. So I think there's more of an emotional feeling about things that have been scooped up than there is about something that we said no to and became a big thing.
Right.
Before.
You know what? That's awesome to be emotionally invested in that stuff. That sounds like passion.
So emotional.
That sounds like passion to me. Sounds like you're passionate.
Oh, definitely. I'm like very quickly like, okay, what's the engine? What's your team size? Where are you based? Come on, so we can just talk about the game. Like, it's really, really great.
Yeah. So another side question: what's your favorite game right now?
Valheim, because I'm basic.
I haven't had a chance to play it yet. Good. I'm a role player too, and I love that, like Conan Exiles and Ark and all that stuff. And I'm seeing everyone do it right now. I'm actually playing Neon Abyss, which is kind of like side-scrolling jumping shooter, Binding of Isaac-ish, because every playthrough is different and you get different things.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's awesome.
I don't do that well with like roguelike kind of games in general. I think
I don't either.
Hades is my exception, because I was like, this is so good. But otherwise, I'm just like, well, I died, so this game's stupid,
Yeah, I died 47 times. Yeah, I'm that way too, but this game is so fun. I feel it's so fun. Okay.
So
here's from the Discord. How long does the process take after we send the game and pitch deck?
For SEGA, I assume. Because it depends, but the process all the way to signing, I think with a lot of publishers, it will be months. With SEGA, I would also say months. It depends. I think we really try to, again, because of the FOMO, we try to do what's possible. So we try to think if there is a risk that someone else is going to snap it up, or in a way that is like less selfish. If we're like, okay, well, the developer has 3 months left of runway, so we do have to like make a decision faster, then we certainly will. But there are, I think, especially for SEGA, because we want to make sure that the long-term partnership is sticky. There are quite a lot of hoops to go through, but I think it's helpful. I think it's helpful for both sides, because if you just rush into these things, we don't want to rush and things not gel together well. I think it's fine to fail on games, but to fail on relationships is really sad.
Right, and there's probably a long, like you said, a lot of hoops to go through. There's probably a longer chain of command, as where like with a small indie publisher, there's like maybe 2 people, and then they decide. And
yeah, exactly. Like you talk to the guy who is the biz dev and who is the managing director, and it's all just done. But I think what we can do to offset that is kind of make sure that the communication about the process is clear. So for example, like the first few parts of the evaluation process for SEGA is someone will talk to me or my colleague Bobby, and then we'll decide internally whether to pitch it, as I was saying at the end of my presentation, and then I'll pitch it to the team of people who would work on the project when it was live. So, brand director, production director, creative director, and then we'll all have like a unanimous decision point about that to take it forward. And then, the more you go, the more the due diligence gets kind of serious. And at SEGA, we commission like a concept test. So we do we do a concept test to see if the market is interested, and consumers will kind of rate just a couple of assets and whatever. And then whatever happens at that point in the due diligence, we'll give a copy of the results to the dev, and we'll pay for that. So there is the due diligence, but it's not I feel like it's not in a crappy way, and it's in a transparent kind of way. So hopefully it all makes sense. But yeah, in terms of how long does the process take, I think months.
How many games a month do you guys publish?
In a year, we only want to sign a handful of stuff. We really aren't about
5
volume.
Less than 5? Okay.
But like I'm trying to be good. Like I'm trying not to be vague, right?
Okay. But you have to be, because it's top secret stuff.
No,
I know.
It's not even that it's top secret stuff. It's just you can't speak to every scenario. Like sometimes you can have half of the year that's so busy, and there's all the projects, and you do sign like a bunch. And sometimes it's really quiet. So I guess it's more of the like being very literal and being like never say never.
I like the top
rather
secret
than
mysterious
like
stuff.
SEGA's magic,
Yeah, I like the top secret mysterious stuff better than, well, it's different this time. Then sometimes
I'm
it's 3,
I'm being
sometimes it's
literal,
10.
and you're like, no, you're magical and mysterious.
Well, haven't you ever heard SEGA? I mean, that's a magical spell, right? Okay, so here we go from John Engesser from LinkedIn. Kind of odd question, but have you heard of any successful pitches to companies that normally work different in a different that normally work in a different industry, like pitching a video game to a book publishing company or something like that?
Well, first, I think this kind of speaks a bit to like what Christian was talking about, where there's like cross-media potential. So if you have The Witcher, if you have Sonic, if you have Pokemon, video games becoming books. I mean, even with stuff like World of Warcraft, those books, whoever wrote those books, they were like New York Times bestsellers. So there is definitely some cross-pollination. And when I was an agent, and even now, I talk to quite a lot of Hollywood agencies where it will be something, an IP, like say a book series or something, moving over into the video game space, or a video game moving over into a TV show space or a movie space. Or people are trying to start to build it from the ground up, where they're like, no, I want to build this as a game and as a TV series. So I think the cross-media thing is becoming more and more of a thing, especially with successes like The Witcher and whatever.
Right.
And for investors, for publishers, it is more interesting if, I guess, the more tentacles it has, the more interesting the creature.
Right, the bigger the IP. I remember back in the day when like a video game became a movie or a movie became a video game, and no matter what, it was garbage either way, right? But now it's like, wow, there's some really awesome games that come from movie IPs and vice versa. All right, Comedy Reflux on Twitch. You see, don't badmouth competitors in every presentation of how to pitch. So now I'm wondering how often pitchers do this.
I think maybe it's just it. I think sometimes it makes sense, like socially, to do it. Where you kind of like people might mutually bond over someone they don't like. So I see where the fishing hook is going. Now that you've done the trout thing, I'm like, fishing. Yeah. I see where it's going. Like, oh, maybe we'll bond over like a mutual whatever, or it's a good way of presenting like, oh, I'm an insider because some dirt about this person.
Yeah. Hey, I hate these guys too. You see.
Yeah, but it's just you don't know how it's going to land, so I think the risk kind of outweighs the potential gain. So just
the industry is super small, right? I was a 3D animator for a long time, and in every single studio there for a while there was at least one person that I knew, right? So it's like if somebody would submit something and they're like, this is not your work, this is somebody else's work or whatever, that would just like right down the line of everybody, and and it's kind of the same thing. Let's see here. Solemn Bro, when you're looking for a publisher for your very first project, it's a good idea to show little games made on jams.
I think this is interesting because I think sometimes the really good thing about game jams, among loads of other things, is that it gives you the chance to be innovative. Like you're really putting creativeness quite high up. So sometimes you can get really cool concepts from that, and maybe you have that and then you build on it, and it is something interesting. But I think when you're thinking about pitches, you really need to see your game as a product. So sometimes it's not a good idea to use stuff for a game jam, because something for a game jam, you're not thinking about that long-term kind of, how is the market going to react? What games exist? You're not going to spend the first, couple of hours of your game jam having a look on Steam at like the top things in the genre and whether it's worth making. It's more about like being inspired and coming together and making this awesome thing. So I think that it lacks the validation checks to be commercially interesting. So that's why I would recommend building on it if you have a good mechanic. And definitely just thinking about it before you put it in, because I think it's about building all of those skills together, which is quite overwhelming. But I think a bit more realistic.
Game jams are a neat thing to put in a resume, but I mean, if you're pitching something specifically, you're only as good as your worst thing, right? Like in someone's portfolio, you have like 9 awesome things, and then one thing that's you're only as good as that thing,
and like. Think of the story that you want to tell as well. Like if you want a game jam and stuff, that's really nice. That's great. But I think you need to take the game jam to the next level, thinking about the audience and the purpose of why you're making that. And the audience of a publisher is different to game jam judges. Both beautiful, but very different.
For sure. Dreamhouse Studios, YouTube has a question. How long are the pitch meetings at Sega in general?
So I'm assuming it's for external developers pitching to us. If it's conferences, then it's 30 minutes. But what I try to do is, it is nice to have a bit of a look at the pitch deck and go over the high level stuff. But then that becomes like a pre-pitch meeting rather than a proper pitch meeting. So it's more important for me to understand maybe like the team and the genre of the game and the budget. And then the actual pitch meeting, I would always give it an hour just to have enough time to talk around it and not just have that discussion at the end, but leave some opportunities for me to politely interrupt and have some kind of conversation about the game design in general.
Politely interrupt. Oh, no. I can see you going, wait. Like, what I think is interesting, you're talking about like don't pitch lore for so long. Like lore is super important in games, but it's like that's like you don't want to pitch. You don't need to pitch that to the publisher. And for example, games on Steam, right? You don't need to have this like whole thing about the lore on a Steam page, right? Because people are look through Steam page in seconds, right? Oh, this game, nope, this game, and it's like if your game. What I don't like on Steam sometimes is when people like have the logo and then blank time and then something else and then blank time and then show something else that's not gameplay. Just drop that gameplay. I want to see it right now because I want to know what I'm going to be playing. The lore I'll be into the lore later, right? I don't care about the lore right now.
Yeah. Or there's a way that you can translate like one of the key pillars or values or whatever is the lore, right? But generally, like Steam is such a good example because you have that little, text underneath the image that's saying like, I don't know, play as a team of 5 to do this and da da da. So that's giving you like the general overview, and then you go down, past the bit where you can press buy, even though you probably shouldn't because there's so many games you haven't played, and then you've got the key features bullet point, like customize your own class, da 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 da, and like that's the way to pithily communicate what you've got going on.
Because the lore can be experienced, right? That's the whole point of the lore. It's like you don't advertise a movie saying all of these things happen in and because then you go to it, you're like, oh,
like those trailers that you watch, and the trailer just shows you the entire plot, and you're like, well, I don't need to watch it now, do I?
Especially with I've seen the movie. And stuff. Yeah, I've seen the movie. I've seen the movie now. Okay, here's one from Oleg Vakutin from YouTube. Does Sega consider mobile games publishing?
It's a good question. We do consider all platforms, but PC console first, because we want to add value. We want to add strength. So it would be a little bit more cheeky to say like, we'll help you on mobile when we don't have that many mobile capacities ourselves. That's not to say we have none, but it's just not as strong as, for example, like PC console strategy and whatever. So ultimately, we want to position ourselves to be the most useful possible, so everyone can get good stuff out of the relationship. But if there's an all-platform, cross-platform kind of thing, and I think also case by case. But if it was, would we do the day-to-day aggressive mobile publishing and understand that as much as a mobile publisher? Then no.
Okay, excellent. Well, you know what? I don't want to end this, but we have to end this. Can you hang out in our Discord for a little bit and answer some questions, Julia? Okay, so you guys, we have Chris Sikowski coming up next, and his talk is how to spy on your competitor and build your marketing plan. That sounds wicked stuff. Chris always has some great information.
Spy makes me sweat, but
yeah. Oh my gosh. But yeah, you guys go to discord.gg/indiegamebusiness and then go into the post-session chat. There's actually a post-session hangout. You can go in there. There's an audio channel if you wanted to go there, Julia. It's up to you. But you guys can type questions in post-session chat, and you got to go in there anyways because we have to talk ukulele, Julia.
We do.
I was telling my wife about it. She's all, all right.
The baritone ukulele is so shiny. Like we should have had a whole talk slot just for that. But
just for the ukulele.
I think we'll forgive you, me and the internet.
Yeah, ukulele and the internet. Things that start with vowels. Okay. Yes, thank you so much.
Awesome.
And get on over to Discord, everyone.